Hi again, everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of Inside Furman Athletics. I am your host, Dan Scott. Good to have you with us. The guy beating up the studio here is Doug Allison. He is the soccer coach for the men's program here at Furman. As if you need an introduction.
Not from you, Dan. The way you introduce me, the way you tear me apart in these sessions. I'm glad I'm back. I really am. It's good to see you.
It's good. It's good to see you too. How have you been?
Been good. In the fall, it's always a little crazy. You never know what's going on as far as something showing up. There's alumni coming back in town. We've got a lot of events going on around the games, and recruits coming in for this with Coach Tucker. So. He's told me about 5 or 6 different guys coming in this week and in the next week and a half. So it is really busy. It's really busy. But
did he expect you to remember all the names off the
top
of your head? Yeah. I mean, we couldn't talk about him if you did, but I'm just saying
that's true.
I'm just saying, did he expect you to remember that?
No, he fills in at the right time. He's learned me. It's taken him 6-7 years now to learn my process, my thought process and stuff. But he's been excellent. He's bringing in a couple of really good classes back to back now, so he's done a great job.
It has been I was going to say a pretty good start to the year, but under the circumstances, I would say a really good start to the year. You're 4-2-1 out of the gate. Only 2 losses to top 10 teams in the country, and yet you're doing it with just an incredible amount of injuries. Again, it seems to be something we've talked about the last year or two, that early in the season there have been some injuries on this team, and it's happened to you again this year, and yet you found a way, as I said, to be sitting here at 4-2-1.
Yeah, we lost some guys early. Our top recruit, Diego, tore his ACL in preseason the 3rd day and really hurt us because we were looking for good things from Diego. He's a fantastic player, but hopefully after the surgery now he's going to come back strong and do his rehab. And we lost a couple of guys down the spine. We lost our goalie a little bit to concussion protocol, then Ivan, Slade, Jake Rain, those guys in preseason games. So I think we got to stop playing preseason games, Dan. I think I need to start learning this stuff. But what's happened is it does give the other guys an opportunity. There's several freshmen that have come in and done well, and several guys like a Connor Dowler stepped up, Callum Allison stepped up. Guys like Caleb Johnson as a freshman's come in and started most of the games, and it's been great to see that, but it can only go so far when the games are twice a week now.
Right.
And particularly coming into conference time. So the teams we lost to are top 10 teams, Duke and Wake, but all the other teams that we've beaten or played against has been some very exciting games. I don't know if you were actually at the game against Gardner-Webb when Jake Rain scored with 89-59 with 1 second left to go, which was great. That's the best way to finish it off when they don't have any time to come back.
Right. You kind of glossed over those players you were mentioning. You just kind of very quickly went over one I wanted to talk about briefly. Callum Allison, you said. Of course, he's related to the head coach, son. But a big moment for him, big moment for Dad. He scored the game winner against Coastal Carolina.
Yeah, I don't think he knows where it hit him when it went in. It was one of those where his roommate hit it and it deflected off Callum and went in, and we didn't know who'd scored. And then he came back and they showed on the video that it actually hit him and deflected past the keeper. But in the end, it was a game winner, and that's against Coastal Carolina, who are a very good team this year. They've just come back and just tied Greensboro and then just beaten James Madison on the weekend. And so to beat them 3-0 at their place. But not just that goal. Dylan Lane scored 2 great goals in that game. It was probably the best team performance we've had in a tough environment. So we've put the guys out there in tough environments to prepare for conference time against really good teams, against tough teams. Everyone seems to be just a little bit better this year, so particularly in the conference.
So of the injured guys, do you have a timetable for some of them to start trickling back into the lineup?
Jake Rain came back, like I say, in the Gardner-Webb game, played 15 minutes and scored the winner. That shows you how valuable he is.
Right.
But I tell you, Christian Krause has really stepped up this year. He's our leading scorer now. He scored 4 goals. Could have had 5 if the ball hadn't been stopped by a handball. You know what that is, don't you?
Yes, I do.
Handball, okay, on the goal line. And Jake actually poked the ball in at the very end. So that could have been Krause's goal as well. But he's someone that over the summer really played and got his confidence back. And in preseason, you could see the guy changed compared to last year with a few injuries that he had. But his confidence is as a forward, you can tell when the guys are confident. To get Jake and him together is something that I've always wanted since I've recruited both those guys. Ivan played 5 to 10 minutes in the Charleston game. He's definitely going to come back at some point. Slade, I'd love to get back for conference because he was our best player last year, all conference, and one of the top freshmen last year. And if we can get him back as well, who knows where this team can go. But I'm really proud of how the other guys have stepped up. Like you mentioned Callum and Connor Dowler and Caleb. Landon Hill's a freshman who's done very, very well. Aaron Salinas is our goalkeeper in the last 4 games as a freshman and has won 3 and tied 1. So, I mean, there's something going on pretty well with the guys that we've got in there, and I like that. I like the fact that a lot of different guys can contribute.
See, this is the point where you're supposed to start talking about your brilliant recruiting. You're bringing in all these fabulous young guys who are stepping in, maybe ahead of schedule, but obviously very talented young players.
Well, Coach Tucker does the recruiting. I'm just telling you now that we work, I think, very, very well together. We had some guys, old assistants like Coach Higginbotham and Coach Marinatos, who's now down at North Florida, Coach Higgies at TCU. So the guys have gone on to their own coaching careers. And Coach Tucker reminds me of those guys, of how good they were at bringing kids in. And he's extremely diligent and going and identifying, but not just that, just the relationship with parents, the relationship with the coach, the relationship with the player, and when to bring me in. And his timing is fantastic right now. And it's really a good 1-2 punch. I like where we are with him. And, I mean, going into his 7th year, again, we've learned how to really work together. And it's the lifeblood of your program as you're recruiting. And I tell you, he's not just good soccer players right now. He's recruiting incredible young men. And, again, that's more important as I get older and more involved in the 29th year. It's being around these kids every day, Dan. I want to be around good kids. And they are exceptional kids this year.
Well, and in a landscape collegiately, especially at the level above us with the Power Fives and all the bigger schools with everything with NIL and everything that's happening there, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but for our level, recruiting's always been about relationships, but I would think that's even magnified more now.
It is. All of the kids that came in this past year could have gone somewhere else, and maybe for cheaper. But we've definitely had to work with them. I was at you talk about Power 5 schools. I was at my old school the other day and just talking to the athletic director there about everyone's got crosses to bear. But I mean, he was telling me about some of the stuff that goes on even for cost of attendance and academic money that they get or NIL money and stuff, and how those issues, we don't even go into that atmosphere. That's not even a conversation with us.
Right.
But some of their guys are getting good money to be in certain places, and I'm like, you know what? I like the fact that our kids come here to be in this program, to be in this culture, and to be with us and to play for us and study at this university. And and sometimes they got to pay just a little bit of money for that, whereas some kids now, if they're looking for an NIL deal, if they're looking to get out the transfer portal and get a quick fix, that's not the kind of guys I want in my program.
Well, it makes perfect sense for the type of program that you have run since you've been here, and at this school, at this level, the type of program I think you have to run to be successful because, and we're drifting into a different topic here, I guess, but when you're talking about the transfer portal, there's a difference in building a team as opposed to building a program. And what you've done long ago is lay the foundation for a program here at Furman, and you keep building onto that foundation.
It started evolving when the alumni started graduating, getting older, and then bringing their kids back and that kind of thing. And I mean, for example, I've got Grant Allard coming in tonight He's flying in, and he's like, "Can we get some dinner? I'd love to talk to the team." Absolutely. Tomorrow I've got Scotty Blunt and Matt Foxall coming in for the game. We're going to come in. Can we talk to the guys at pregame? Absolutely. Last week it was Mr. Griffin, for the Greg Griffin game, talking to the guys. The week before it was Graham Seagraves talking to the guys. This coming weekend, obviously, is McNeil Cronin, which we'll talk about more. So I love the fact that these guys follow the guys. They don't just leave the program. I told them they never leave. They may be away in a different part of the world, but they never leave the program, and they're always welcome back. Come back, bring your wives back, bring your kids back, show them whether you're proud to have played and proud to have studied, and they do. And our guys, particularly, we took a trip last spring to England with our team, and we had about 12, 13 alumni come on that trip, and a couple of donors, a couple of alumni, but 13 guys that were there and mentoring our current team in a lot of different ways, and just telling them what it's like in the real world now, and saying this is how you stay involved in the program. This is how you stay with the current guys. Social media helps, of course, but these guys, they call, they text, they want to be part of it. They follow it all the time, and as they go out there, the calls I get from these guys are hilarious sometimes. They're ripping on each other all the time, but that's part of it.
Yeah, once you've been once in the locker room, always in the locker room, right?
And I think they do miss that.
Yeah.
I miss it. I miss being a player in the locker room. I mean, I think when you're involved in college sports in any way, the banter in the locker room is the best part, man. I mean, I love that, and particularly having a few little Brits around, their humor is a little crazier than most, and I love that part. And our guys, when they leave here, I think they miss that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what that trip to England was missing?
You.
A broadcaster to narrate the trip. That's what that trip was
coming
missing.
over to see if you can find a baseball game.
There you go. I actually follow on Twitter the British Baseball Association. Believe it or not. So,
BBA?
Something like that.
Well, you're looking at the BBC.
Anyway, this is Doug Allison. He is the 29th year head coach of the Furman men's soccer program. We're recording on Monday, dropping it on Tuesday. So if you're watching this on Tuesday, tonight at Stone Stadium, playing Davidson in the non-conference finale. And then on Saturday against UNCG as the conference opener and the annual Quinn game, which we're going to get to in a moment. I want to talk about a couple of things that have just recently transpired, though. Your volunteer assistant coach, Charlie Arndt, had a big honor down at South Carolina just a few days ago. Yeah,
Charlie was a fantastic keeper. I mean, we were teammates for 3 years. He's volunteered, like I say, for 29 years. He's volunteered since day one for me, and pay him what he's worth. We haven't paid him a penny in 29 years. So, I mean, he is a terrific goalkeeper coach. He's been an incredible teammate of mine, a mentor of mine to a certain extent, and someone who challenges me all the time to be a better coach, better person. And he got his jersey retired at South Carolina, and so it's only the second jersey they have retired. And it was fantastic to see some of his old teammates there, some of my old teammates there, his old coach, Coach Burson, after the game doing a little ceremony. We had all our coaching staff and our wives there as well to support Charlie, and just really proud of him for what he'd done, because, I mean, the guys always asked me, like, was he good? Was he a good goalie? And I'm like, he was the best. I mean, we'd go a goal up against Duke or against Clemson or UCLA when we played in those games at Carolina, and I'd always point back to Charlie, said, now you got to keep us in the game. And I tell you, Dan, more often than not, he did.
Yeah, because, we had Andrew Burr on last week, and I asked him what kind of player he was, and he immediately pointed back to a conversation he said he had with you, so I guess he threw you under the bus as well, where I think his words were that Doug and I were similar, that we very rarely, if ever, crossed onto the defensive end of the field.
Yeah,
you were
he's right.
You had a scorer's mentality?
Yeah, I kind of saw Charlie at halftime and said, "How you doing?" As the
Oh,
game
yeah, I
back there.
remember you.
And he's the reason they had to put in the new rule about you can't roll the ball around as a goalie. You have to get rid of it within 5 seconds. Because I used to be free, and I used to say if it weren't for Charlie Arndt, I'd scored a couple more goals. I mean, because he's hanging on to the ball and he was just, I see you up there, but I'm going to hold the ball right now and stuff. I'm like, Charlie, come on, get rid of that ball. But he was awesome, Dan. I remember distinctly Final Four. We played in the Final Four, Indiana, and the Indiana goalkeeper, the Howard goalkeeper, the Portland goalkeeper, and Charlie. All those guys were good goalies, and they played for their national teams, those other guys. Charlie was the goalkeeper of the year that year in college in '88, and All-American, academic All-American. He did it on every front, and he's been involved, obviously, with us since leaving there and volunteering and staying in college sports. And, it's a testament to everything that he stands for and how good he was. But but even then, his speech, he was deflecting the credit. It was like, thanks my coaches. I had great teammates that I played. This is gone a little bit. Oh, there you go. That I played behind, that I was fortunate to play with, that kind of thing. So it was typical Charlie, where he's deflecting all the credit to other people. And my thoughts to their AD and to their other coaches were, no, he deserves this. I'm really, really proud of Charlie.
The other thing that just transpired, you mentioned kind of in passing a moment ago, you have 2 annual games. One of them we're going to talk about in a moment, the Quinn Game, but the Greg Griffin game just took place. And for people who watch your interviews when we do them a couple of times a year, to them it may seem repetitive, but I don't care if it is or not, honestly, because I think it's something that needs to constantly be brought up, and I'm sure there are people out there who are watching this for the first time and have no idea who Greg Griffin was and why you would do a game in his honor. So I'll just allow you to explain that.
Yeah, we played that game last Tuesday, a week ago, today, in the Davidson game. But Mr. Griffin comes back every year. 21 years ago, we unfortunately had a car accident. Gray did, and passed away in a car accident after funnily enough, his 12th game here, and he was number 12. We have actually retired his jersey. It's the only jersey I've retired here, and I don't want anyone else wearing that jersey because that belonged to Gray. And we celebrate his life, how good a player he was, but again, how good a person he was. And it's a day that Mr. Griffin gets to talk about his son. And, again, it's never easy for him. It's never easy. If anyone out there, I mean, if you have kids, if you have children, you'll understand. But you never want to lose a child. And he gets to talk about his son. And I tell our team the day before every time, said, for you 4th years or 5th years, red shirts, COVID guys that have come back for 5th year, it's your 5th year of hearing the stories. I said, but I love it. I've heard it for a long time now, and I love hearing about Gray, about what he brought, how good he was, how he lived his life for how short it was. And it was it's a time that Mr. Griffin can come and talk about Gray and remember him. And as it gets on, this is, again, 21 years ago, different times come in. And, one thing he talked about was about, the possibility of the people he's around these days when he volunteers at a golf course up at Pinehurst. And he said, the people that I'm around my age, they talk about the grandkids. And he goes, I never got to. And that really struck home. And it was something that he's never really brought up before. And it's one of those things that, escapes you until you talk to Mr. Griffin and say, that kind of left him a little bit hollow and stuff. But, it's tough. But he can advise other people. He can talk to other people about saying, I've got a problem with my son or a problem with my kids or my grandkids or stuff. And he's like, you get to have them. And it puts him in perspective very quickly. And he is an awesome man. And I love him coming back telling the stories about Gray. I love the fact that he comes back and he chooses a player of the game in honor of Gray every year. Our alumni award, which is the most important award, the only award I give out each year for the alumni, is the Gray Griffin Award. And it's always someone that's lived their life or played like Gray or has an outlook like Gray and can affect people like Gray did. because the other thing that Mr. Griffin told me was, and I mentioned, I said, I couldn't believe how many people 21 years ago were at that funeral. And that it was packed, and then there was people all the way around the outside of the church that come to pay respects, flying in from everywhere, all over the world. And he said the guy that organized the funeral also organized it was a NASCAR guy. I don't really know NASCAR that well, but do you know it was a pretty famous NASCAR guy that
died?
Yeah, that died.
Dale Earnhardt.
Dale Earnhardt. That's it. He'd said the guy said that was very similar amount of people were at that funeral at Dale Earnhardt's compared to Gray's. He said it was just that amount of respect for a guy like Gray. And he was only 18.
Right, and that's a couple of things coming to mind as we're talking about that. He would be approaching 40 now.
Yeah.
For his dad, it has to be therapeutic for him to continue to come back here. And while he doesn't have any grandchildren of his own, he always has that family of kids here that turns over every 4 years, and there are always new people who are coming into your program that he'll get to educate about who his son was and continue to be part of your program.
Yeah, his stories are amazing, and he tells different stories. They're not always the same stories. He tells different stories all the time, and even the one he told this year about Gray being in the Under-17 World Cup. He was the captain of the World Cup team. I mean, he wasn't a bad player, and some of the stories he was telling. It's really important for our guys to know traditions in our program.
Right.
And that I'm all about traditions.
We're visiting with Doug Allison on this week's edition of Inside Furman Athletics. And as we get into wrap-up mode, we mentioned recording this on Monday, dropping on Tuesday. So Tuesday night or tonight, depending on when you're watching, home against Davidson at Stone Stadium in the non-conference finale. And then on Saturday, our girl is going to be in town, the annual Quinn Game, so that means that McNeil and the whole show is going to be here, and she's going to score, and you can't stop her. And it's marvelous to see what this game to support and bring awareness to Down syndrome has grown into over the years.
Yeah, she's practicing this week.
Oh, I'm sure.
She's wearing a shirt. She's practicing. She's at school. She's telling everyone. Talked to McNeil earlier, and he's like, I can't stop her. I mean, she's up ready to go to school in her Furman shirts, and she's ready. She's kicking the ball around in the back garden. She's at school kicking the ball around and stuff, and she's ready to take a kickoff against Greensboro and score a goal. And for McNeil and his family, it's just amazing.
Right.
Kelly comes down, McNeil's wife, and brings the other kids, but I think Quinn's going to be about 11 or 12 this year. And they've been doing this for about 8-9 years now, and it is my favorite game. I mean, it's just no matter what the opponent is, it's my favorite time to celebrate and to raise awareness of Down syndrome and kids with special needs, and the Upstate Alliance will be here with Nia and her son Joe, who lives down the street from me, who has Down syndrome. Unfortunately, he hurt his foot earlier on this year, so we had to send him a card from the team. And it's just Nia Zambrano is an angel too. She does a lot of work behind the scenes to help kids in this area as well. And it's great to see them come out with their families and walk out with the players too.
You know me, I don't attend a lot of soccer matches. That's
good sometimes, because the heckling. It's like all of a sudden he's like yelling at the wrong. I'm like, damn.
Well, but a lot of it is schedule oriented. Yeah, you seem to play football when we're playing football a lot. But
that's true.
But my wife and I have been to a couple of the Quinn games, and to me, it's not just the joy of seeing Quinn do her thing prior to the game, but how it's grown and the number of kids in the Down syndrome community who are now on the field, getting recognized and having that moment and soaking in all of that's going on that evening. I mean, you start out to do something nice for Quinn. Did you ever think it was going to grow to what it is now?
No, never even thought about it. Just it was about Quinn, and it's always about Quinn, but.
And it still is.
It is. If she's watching this, it is about you, Quinn. Believe me, it's all about you. And it's one of those things that, as something that's just an offset of it and something that's happened, it's morphed into this where the David May and Emery, who played here, their son Wyatt, Emery's brother, David May's son, they have taken over the Down Syndrome Alliance in Kansas area now, and they do the buddy walk this weekend, and it all kind of coincides because October is Down Syndrome Awareness Month. But it's just really exploded, and I love it. I mean, unfortunately, we can't do the buddy walk because it's during the game. It's that time. But when we do the buddy walk with these kids, the smiles on those faces of those kids, but even just as important, the parents. They get to let their kids go with these college student athletes and hold their hands and kind of hang out and kick a ball with them and stuff, and they get to smile.
Yeah.
That's important. It's important, and we have that platform that we could do that, Dan, and we should do more of it. But you've got to focus at some point somewhere because you get diluted if you try and do too much. And I really wanted to make this another tradition, and it's the most important tradition for me.
And what's happened along with this parallel track is what McNeil has done in the state of North Carolina, battling to make sure that Quinn and other youngsters who have Down syndrome are given the same kind of educational opportunities that everyone else gets.
Yep, they won the court battle.
Yep,
they won it, and I think there was a subsidiary element that just happened last year. You're saying that for the next 5 years now, an additional 5 years, it's grandfathered in for every kid now for 5 years in North Carolina, so they can't come back within that 5 years and try and change it again. So I think you'll have to go back to court again 5 years' time, but that's the good thing is the kids for the next 5 years are going to be educated. They're going to have equipment. They're going to have teachers. They're going to be recognized. They're going to have some attention paid to them. You know, I will say one other thing which was really cool for me when I got back from England from the tour this past spring. I was asked to do the opening of the Special Olympics here at Furman. And we finally got it back here on campus after the COVID years and not being able to do it. And my initial thought was like, I'm exhausted. I've just done this and this and this. And we just taken 45 people to England. And I've got back. I'm exhausted. We've had all these alumni relations with back. And the day I got back, they said, can you do this opening of the Special Olympics next week? And I'm like, guilty. I mean, and I feel guilty as charged, but it was like my first thought was selfish. It was more of, why me? Why me? And then, a couple of days later, I talked to a friend of mine who, Jim Sonnefeld, who was one of my teammates at South Carolina, who's the drummer for Hootie and the Blowfish. And he was one of my teammates, and he talks. He does a lot of faith healing through talks now and music and stuff like that. He's just an incredible individual whose son just graduated from Furman last year. And so Jim and I called him. I said, why do I get this feeling? Is it why me? Why am I doing this? He goes, if you can affect one person when you talk, do it. He goes, if you feel like you can't, don't do it. But if there's 100 people in the room, 400 people in the room, and there happen to be a couple of thousand people at Special Olympics open up. He goes, but if you can affect one person, it's worth it. And I'm like, he goes, go and take the time to do it. Stop asking me and just say yes. So he's like basically told me, stop feeling sorry for yourself.
Quit feeling sorry for yourself and
get
go
out
do
there
it.
and help those kids because that's why there's been a reason for you doing this.
And after you did it.
Oh, it was, Dan, the amount of kids I saw that I recognized from the Quinn Game, and afterwards from all the schools around and all the stuff. And I'm like, why was I thinking, why me? How selfish am I? That's so wrong, And the fact that I did it, I got so much more out of that, of just giving those kids hugs afterwards and them coming up saying hello and just watching them compete after that. I mean, it was just amazing that the amount of parents I knew that had those kids of special needs, and they were out there running and jumping and throwing and stuff and then enjoying the fellowship and the just togetherness of that event. What an incredible event at Furman. If you get a chance to come see the Special Olympics event, I think everyone should come and do that again. And I told him, said if I'm ever lucky enough to open that ceremony again, I'd do it every year.
Yeah, my wife had been on, I think, 3 different mission trips before I finally got to go on one with her a few years ago. And she had always told me, you go expecting to be a blessing to other people, and you are, but you usually come away more blessed because of who you're interacting with and seeing circumstances and realizing exactly why you've been put on earth to do certain things. And I think besides being a great soccer coach, this is why you've been put on earth to do things and to affect people like this.
Well, who knows, Dan? You always get me at one point during the interview. But
well, that's my job.
Yeah,
that's my job.
But I really thank Jim for making me do that and saying that, and I'll never forget that, and I'm going to go with that forever from now on. Just to say, if you can affect one person, it's worth it.
It certainly is. So that is Saturday, 7:30, right?
7 o'clock.
7 o'clock.
Yep.
Stone Stadium, the Quinn game, and all that. The hoopla will happen prior to
right
kick.
Before the game. So please come a few minutes early just to see that and meet Quinn and give her a hug. And she's awesome.
And watch her score.
Yeah. Yeah, she gets a goal for us every year. She's been our leading scorer for the last several years. But it's great. And, to see McNeil now as a parent, bringing his daughter and how proud he is and what that means to him as well, it's just that's what this alumni is all about. And that's what this tradition is all about, Dan.
Sounds good. Anything else we need to cover?
No, thanks for having me.
Well, thank you for coming. We need to do this more often. This is Doug Allison. Again, if you're watching this, we're dropping it on Tuesday. So Tuesday night, Stone Stadium, the non-conference finale against Davidson. And then 7 o'clock on Saturday, Stone Stadium, the Quinn game against UNCG that, by the way, opens conference play, so it's an important soccer match as well. And with the football team being off, we'd love to see a lot of our football fans over at Stone Stadium to support Doug, this men's soccer program, and, of course, the Quinn game and the bringing awareness to Down syndrome.
Yeah, one last thing, if you allow me. If Dave Prentice is watching in Australia, because he listens and watches your shows religiously every week, if he's watching in Australia, good to see you, Dave, and best of luck to your family.
Hey, Dave, send me an email. I want to talk to you about some radio stuff in Australia. How about that?
He probably will.
Well, I hope he does, because I'm not joking.
Yeah.
It's good to see you.
Thanks, Dan.
That is Doug Allison. This has been this week's edition of Inside Furman Athletics. Hope you enjoyed it. We'll be back again next week. Same time, same place. Until then, for Doug, I'm Dan Scott, as always, saying God bless you, and so long, everybody.